This week's episode of the Irish Dance Podcast is being sponsored by Irish Dance Theatre, who are currently auditioning for spots in their Christmas production, The Celtic Gift, playing in multiple venues in Colorado this December. For more information, please visit irishdancetheatre.com. If you would like to support Irish Dance Theatre, there are a number of ways you can do so. Please go to irishdancetheatre.com/support. My name is Martin Percival, and you are listening to the Irish Dance Podcast, folk dance to phenomenon and beyond. I don't have a guest to introduce today because I've been asked by quite a few people if they can hear my story. So it's going to be brief because I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about myself. But as I have been asking people questions about how they got involved in Irish dance and what they think of the Irish dance scene and, where we're going and this, that and the other, I thought I'd, have the opportunity to say a little bit about my story. So I started dancing at the age of 5 for Deirdre McAleer in England. I went along. One of my mum's friends was her daughter was dancing, and she told her that it was at the Irish Cultural Club, the Shamrock Club in Welwyn Garden City. And so my mum decided to take us along. So she took me, my brother, and two of my female cousins, and went along, and for the first class I didn't do anything. We just watched, and I think that was obviously fine, but it was interesting because the next week my mum thought nothing more of it, and then coming up to the next class, I asked her if we were going dancing this week, and she of course said absolutely, and took us along. So then I started under the expert tutelage of Deirdre McAleer. So I just wanted, it's always interesting to me how people start the journey, but for me it was because it was something that my mum always wanted. She wanted us to have exposure to Irish culture. So, of course, there was Irish music in the house, and she comes from a long line of musicians. And so it was important to her that we had Irish culture, and the dance aspect of that was something that she really enjoyed. So, fast forward a year, I was blessed, I guess, in enough that I loved it. I absolutely love it. I took to it like a duck to water. My brother was doing it as well, and he he was very good at it, but he just didn't take to it just as much as I did. And he said to my mum, if you lift my legs for me, I'll do it. So anyway, but I had some great success in my competitive career. I was All England champion, Great Britain champion. The highest place at the world was 3rd. Always won my rock, just that kind of thing, qualifiers. And so I had very good success. And then came my teenage years. So around the age of 14, I decided that I didn't want to dance anymore. And I said to my mum, my teacher was very headstrong. I was very headstrong. We kind of butted heads during that time because, of course, I was a teenager and I thought I knew better than anybody else. And it wasn't until years later, until I actually started teaching myself, that I realised how well I have been taught. And so, anyway, long story short, I quit for a couple of years. I wouldn't even let Mum play Irish music in the house and this, that and the other. And she was devastated, of course, but followed my wishes and that kind of thing. But it was a friend of mine, Imelda. I was getting on the school bus, and she was talking about dance class, and she obviously carried on with Deirdre. But she told me that my teacher had moved from commission to Kogel, and I had no clue what that was, absolutely no clue. So I asked her what it was all about, and she just said that it was a bit more traditional. It wasn't quite so manic, and so I need to backtrack just a little bit here. So my last World Championships, so I was 3rd, and then I went into the World Championships the next year and I was 4th. And I remember a lot of people coming up to my teacher and saying, oh yeah, he's definitely got it this year. That's it. This is the year for him, blah, 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 this, that and the other. And then I was 4th. And so while 4th isn't like terrible, in my little mind at that time, I thought that my dancing was going downhill and I'd never be able to recover. And rather than talking about that with my teacher, which would have been the most sensible thing to do, I quit. And so, like, I'm not very proud of that, but I did quit. I didn't want to do it. So when Imelda was talking to me about a different organisation, I just thought, well, maybe this will be a fresh start, and it won't be. There was a lot of pressure. I was a good dancer. I was Deirdre's boy and this, that and the other. And so I'm just, of course, in retrospect, you can think all sorts of things. So I decided to go back to dance class. And it wasn't easy. I had to... Imelda brokered the deal. And Deirdre said, we'd have to talk. And I went back and... she asked why I wanted to go back. And we had a discussion about it. And she laid down the rules of the respect that I needed to give. Absolutely, totally fair. And it was interesting because when I went back then, it rekindled the love for Irish dance. So in the grand scheme of things, I definitely know that was what needed to happen. But at the time, it was devastating, of course. Anyway, so Kogel was great. I loved it. I did very well there as well. I was second at the All-Irelands, which at that time was their World Championships. And, I loved it. I met some great people. We had a really good laugh. And it was a real community aspect for the teachers in London at that time. I'll be clear. I think things have changed slightly. But... for me, at that time, from the age of 16 to when I went away to university at, I think I was 19, when that happened, it was a really good time, really positive, and I loved every minute of it. And it was then, actually, when I was going to the All-Ireland, I was away at university and I went to the All-Ireland, and I shouldn't have been dancing. I wasn't fit enough. I think I came 4th that year, but I had bronchitis. I couldn't dance. I couldn't breathe. I wasn't in shape. But, you try your best. But anyway, I was there. And it was that year, I believe, that we saw Riverdance come on the television because it was happening in Dublin at that time. And it was phenomenal. It was absolutely amazing. And, blew my mind as it did everybody else's. And... I was blown away. I was really excited about the fact that Irish dance was being recognised, and, it was a big deal. So I carried on at university. I did a degree in accounting, law and management. It was the most boring, hideous thing I've ever done in my life. But I thought I needed to do it to get a proper job. So when I finished that, I came out of university and I took over a couple of classes from different people in Kogel. Now, bear in mind, during that time, I took my teacher's exam with commission because I didn't want to have to take it in 2 parts. And commission was 1 year and Kogel was 2 years. So I decided to take it with commission because I thought, well, I'll probably teach commission. As it happened, I was offered some classes by different people who were retiring, and I thought that was a great opportunity. But they were Kogel teachers, so I thought I better teach Kogel. I had my interview with Kogel, I moved back to them, and I started teaching in London. I was doing some professional Irish dance as well at the time with Lillian Massey, and just a few television gigs and that kind of thing, and that was great. That introduced me to a whole different realm of people and dancers, and I had a really good time with all of that. And then I went on briefly to do a very interesting. It was a bad show. When I was in it, I can't speak to what it's like now, but it was Spirit of the Dance. And, of course, it was my first foray into a professional tour, and that was great. And it taught me a lot about touring and about what I don't like about it, because we were on our own to get our own accommodation and this, that and the other. and I had auditioned for a few other shows at that point, and I believe that there was a show that was going to be happening with Kathleen Clifford and Aaron Crosby. I remember Kathleen at the audition, and it was videotaped. So I had also driven down to Bournemouth to audition for Riverdance. So I auditioned for this one with Kathleen. It was videotaped, and nothing came of it. So I didn't think anything more of it. But interestingly enough, I believe that videotape was then sent to Mary Duffy, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I think this is the way it happened. And then I was asked to join the rehearsals of Lord of the Dance in Pineapple Studios in the summer of 1997. So that was great and really exciting. I was working in a shoe shop at the time. I was assistant manager and was living my best life. And my mum came in at lunchtime and she said, "Can you take your lunch now?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And I left with her and we had lunch, and she said, "Lord of the Dance called and they want you to start rehearsals on Saturday." So I had to go in. This was, I think, a Monday or a Tuesday, and I went into work and I said to them, "I have to leave, I'm very sorry, but I've been given this opportunity and it's too good to miss." So I did that, and we had 6 weeks of rehearsals in London, which was intense and wonderful. And then we went off to Reno, Nevada for our tech week, and then we started our tour in Boise, Idaho. Had an absolute brilliant time, loved Lord of the Dance, absolutely loved it. And then I was asked to learn the principal role, originated by Michael Flatley, the good guy. And then I moved to Vegas, and I was in Vegas for a year as a principal, and that was just another experience altogether. Don't need to get what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? But I was itching to do something more and something more creative. Because, I really enjoyed it and I loved it. And my mum had seen me dance out there, and it was a really special occasion. And that was it. I felt like I'd reached the pinnacle there, and I wanted to be involved with a show that was from the ground up. And so I auditioned and got into Dancing on Dangerous Ground, which was another phenomenal experience. Phenomenal. I can't say enough about it. Loved every minute of it. And I mean, even the painful bad bits were, in retrospect, I look back and it was character building, and it was wonderful. So, but it was a real shame that the show didn't, get off the ground. That could be for another whole podcast of if when I interview Colin Dunn and Jean Butler, we can talk about that. But needless to say, it didn't get off the ground, and then I was left. I didn't want to go back to Lord of the Dance. I felt like I'd probably burned my bridges there, which, on a side note, don't ever burn bridges. It's not great. But full of ego, whatever. Like we learn the lessons. You grow up a bit, but so then I decided to go back to. I went back to. Excuse me. I went back to Ireland. My mum and dad were living in Ireland at the time, and mum and my brother and my dad were running a pub, and my uncle and his girlfriend were all running a pub there, and it was great time. Small village is where my mum grew up. Beautiful, but not really the life for me. It was very, very slow. So I auditioned then to Dance on the Moon, which was playing in Killarney or somewhere around there. And then I got that, and I was actually on the bus on the way to Tralee to go into Killarney to start performances or rehearsals with to Dance on the Moon. And then Riverdance called, because I'd gone up to Dublin and auditioned again for Riverdance. And I hadn't heard anything from them, so I was like, I'll just take this job to Dance on the Moon. And, a few of my Dangerous Ground friends were going there, and it was all going to be hunky-dory. But I got a call from Riverdance. So Mum and Dad hopped in the car, and they came into Tralee and stopped me getting on the train to go to Killarney and said, Riverdance called and they want you to join. So that was great. I loved that. And I toured the Far East with the Liffey. And then I went on to come to the North American tour, the Lagan, as a trainee understudy. And I had a great time with that and loved being in North America, so much so that I decided when I was in Denver, we were there for 2 weeks, and I fell in love with the place, and I decided to stay. So I came backwards and forwards to Denver for a couple of years while touring with Riverdance. But I knew that's where I wanted to put my roots down. And so I did. I started a school, and it was a great experience. I'll be honest, I'll be 100% honest, I wasn't welcomed with open arms as a teacher into the region, but I understand it. It's like, who does this guy think he is? He's coming from a show, thinks he's all that in a bag of chips. I get it. I get where they're coming from now. At the time, I didn't realize it. I just needed the work. I had a visa that basically I could teach or I could perform. So that's all I could do. Anyway, once I got my green card and everything like that, it was all fine. But, that was all I could do. I couldn't go out and get a regular job. Teaching, so I had to take transfers and I had to create that enmity and all of that horrible stuff that I didn't really want to do. But, such is life. And I went on to have a very successful school. The kids, I have kids that were 6th in the World Championships, and we won the Oireachtas and did very well at nationals and that kind of thing. And I really enjoyed it. So I'll backtrack to actually coming over to North America. So I went to the North American Nationals, I think it was when it was in Boston, so it must have been, 2002 maybe, or one. I can't quite remember. But I remember going there and thinking, because I was a teacher and I had, registered with commission. And so, because I'd passed my teacher's exam in 1995, before I ever went to any show. But I went to the North American Nationals, and I remember thinking, because I went to, I went to just meet friends and this, that, and the other. Kerry Houston, I was in Riverdance with Kerry Houston, so I was staying with her and her mum and her sister, and it was lovely. They're such a lovely family, and brilliant teachers. And so I went with them, and was just kind of feeling it out, what the North American Teachers Association was all about and that kind of thing. I remember feeling very, very intimidated because there's lots and lots of successful teachers walking around, and it seemed like everybody knew each other, and it's a very small world and this, that, and the other. And I'd never even been to a fesh in North America, let alone know any of the teachers. And I will have to say that between Kim and Sally and Kerry, we had. I won't go into the details, but they gave me a little game, ice-breaking game that we could use, which kind of settled my nerves and around all of these successful people, and I managed to get to know quite a few people, which was great. So I felt like, okay, this is my place, this is where I can go and I can teach and this, that, and the other. So that was all great. Was teaching for 10 years. It was hard because I was teaching by myself. I had help from other teachers, which was great, but I was running the school. It was all wrapped up in my ego and how I wanted to be this, that, and the other. It's funny when you get the benefit of some distance from some stuff that you think I personally think I would do things very differently, but it is what it is, and it happened. And so I taught successfully for 10 years, and then I stopped because, in all honesty, I was drinking a lot, and it was getting under my skin. Everything was going wrong. The competitive world was really hard, and my world was shrinking. And just for those of you who are listening, I am in recovery from alcoholism. Have been for 4.5 years, and at the time of this recording, which is October of 2018, nearly 5 years. And at that time, I was sinking into despair. And, everything gets blown out of proportion when you're in the midst of active addiction. And I couldn't I couldn't handle the business. I couldn't handle what was happening. Kids were leaving, they were transferring to other schools, this, that, and the other. It was all. I felt like my world was crumbling, and it did. It crumbled. It completely crumbled. But I remember feeling very, very grateful and a relief off my shoulders when I closed the school. And it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life, ever. And I remember talking to my teacher, I remember talking to a few friends, and, the advice was to do what my heart said. My heart said was to stop. So that was good. And so I went into recovery, and I'm in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. I go to meetings, have a sponsor, do all of that stuff. And I decided to take my real estate exam. And so my life took on a very different road and path. And I really enjoyed that challenge of changing and moving to a different industry and not knowing anything about it, and having to have some transferable skills and just start from the bottom and not being an expert in any of it. And I really enjoyed that challenge. And it was an opportune time for me because I stopped drinking, I was in recovery, and I could focus my time. And so that was great. Really enjoyed that. But when I met my now fiance, Mark, when I met him, he's a former ballet dancer, former professional dancer, and he was with Miami City Ballet, and just a beautiful, beautiful dancer. And so, of course, we had all of that in common, and he shows me. I hadn't really been exposed to the ballet world until that point, and he's a huge fan of George Balanchine, and so he started showing me stuff, and he gets so passionate and excited about dancers and what they're doing and this, that, and the other. And he was really excited about the Irish dance world because he hadn't been involved, and because I was still judging and still running a fashion, that kind of thing. So I was still involved in the Irish dance world. And so the combination of having him back in my life, being in recovery, and my creativity just came back with a bang. I'd been told that in recovery, it can take a while, so because I felt like I probably never would be involved in it again. I wouldn't ever teach. I just didn't know what the future held for me in terms of Irish dance and creativity. And that was interesting, but a little bit painful, because it was such a huge part of my life. It has been since I was 5 years old. So when it did come back, and I've always wanted to do Irish dance to Christmas music. And in fact, my students did. We used to do a Christmas show with Christmas music, and it was after the Oireachtas, so there was some downtime, and it was just something as a bit of fun, and it was really cute, and I loved it. So I knew that there was an opportunity to do that professionally. So when Mark showed me, he has a mentor, because he's a photographer now, and you can check out his webpage, markrossphotography.com, or denverportraitphotographer.com. He showed me a video from a mentor group that he's involved in from Sue Bryce, and it was about fear. And it was an hour long, and I was like, oh, God, here we go. But I watched it, and I was riveted. And without a shadow of a doubt, it changed my life. So if you get a chance to, just Google it, Sue Bryce. She's from New Zealand, and she's amazing. And it was her fear talk. So I watched that, and then I got a business profile that she recommended, and I did that. And it turns out that I have a double. I'm a creator and a star, which it all made sense when I read the profile, that I can be in the spotlight, but I also need to shine the light on other people. And it was then that it clicked. Everything clicked in my mind. And I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to put on a show. So this was in the summer. And I said, all right, okay. And so I just made a decision there and then to put on a Christmas show. I spoke to a friend of mine who was a composer, and I said to him, would you be able to write some music if I did this show? And he said, absolutely. And, we had a great chat about it. And so I booked a venue. I went and looked at a venue, and I booked it. And it was beautiful. It was in the Newman Centre at Denver University, and it's gorgeous, gorgeous auditorium. So when I went to meet Trevor, who's the composer, I said, I booked this venue, and he said, "Oh, you're serious?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And so, it was the first time that I had something to grab hold of, and so I ran with it. Music came, and I was inspired, and I created some dances, and I had some amazing dancers who really did an awful lot, like at the very last minute, to get this show on. And it was a great show. And I really enjoyed every moment of it. And I had asked my very good friends Lisa Kelly to sing, and Scott Porter, her husband, to dance, and Kira Sexton, of course, who's absolutely amazing and a beautiful dancer and performer, asked them to be involved, and they said yes. And I was very, very honoured, to have them. And so the show went on, and it was great, but but it's like I didn't really know what I was doing. So after that, Kira and I talked, and we decided that we would join forces, and we rebranded I think it was Irish Dance Performing. I can't even remember now, but we decided to rebrand the company as Irish Dance Theatre, and so that's what happened. And then Kira got involved, and then we put on last year's Christmas show, and so. In my head, what seems a very organic kind of growth to this company has, it's not going fast enough for me and Kira, because we've got so much that we want to do. But that, to me, was the most amazing thing about the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, how... there's a path for us, and I just see that was my path was laid out before me. So we did the Christmas show last year, and it was great, and absolutely, had some brilliant dancers, and we really started expanding what it was that we could do, and we were challenging the dancers, and it was really interesting and entertaining, and it was received very well in Colorado. To the point where we had some, people interested in executive producing and giving us some money and this, that, and the other. Now, I will have to say, in the spirit of transparency, that didn't work out quite as planned, and unfortunately, we spent the better part of last year in negotiations, which then didn't really work. So we are once again self-producing, and which is great, and it's fine, and everything will be wonderful, because we're casting now for dancers. We've got, we've got a great product. There's Irish dance and Christmas music works really well. It works so well. I can't even explain it to you. But while we wanted to have a big tour of this Christmas show this year, it will have to be a bit more subdued and just involved in Colorado and possibly a couple of other places. If we can. So that's what's happening at the moment. But it is so exciting. Like, I can't. When I watched that YouTube video of Subrize and overcoming fear, it was the first time I really allowed myself to dream as big as I needed to dream. I've always had dreams. I've always had dreams about what I wanted to do. I've wanted to entertain people, and I have entertained people my whole life. And I'm really grateful and honoured to have done all of that. But I have bigger ambitions for the world of Irish dance and professional Irish dancing. And I don't know what it is about the Irish dance world. I mean, we're very lucky to have had Riverdance and Lauderdance, which kind of exploded onto the world. And the reason I'm doing this podcast is because of that. And there's now, I wouldn't say a vacuum, but there is opportunities now for other stuff to happen. And Heartbeat of Home's coming out again, and that's great. And, but I just think that the professional Irish dance world perhaps, it just needs more input. It needs more support. It needs more people. It just needs more. And so that's what Kira and I would like to do. And I won't speak for her, but I'll speak for myself. And with the company, with Irish Dance Theatre, we want to show the world what Irish dancers are capable of. And of course, we need the money to do that. So the Christmas show, which, it's a commercial product that does very well. If it could become the Irish dance equivalent of the Nutcracker every year and people doing it, then it would be amazing, because, we could bring in some serious money that way, but also establish Irish dance. It's a seasonal production that comes out. And so with all of the discussions that Mark and I have had about the ballet world and everything, I would like to see, and Kira and I have talked about this, that our Irish Dance Theatre is based more along the lines of a ballet company. So we have seasonal productions, we can tour those seasonal productions, we can have resident companies, and we can have an academy at some point that is then, developing the talent of professional Irish dance. This is a grand scheme of things, and I don't mind saying it's an ambitious goal. I know that, but I'm dreaming big, and I do truly believe that I'm not even going to say if, I'm just going to say when Irish Dance Theatre is successful and it's a huge company, the money that's coming in from that then can be then given to other startup Irish dance companies, and that's how then we can give back. But right now, and the reason I'm doing this podcast and talking about me and my passion and this, that, and the other as well, is because we need some support from the outside world. We have some businesses that are advertising and sponsoring the company, which is great, but we could do with as much support as is humanly possible. So if you're listening to this, if you could go to irishdancetheatre.com and just have a look. There's a number of different options of how you can help. If friends and family, you can donate some money and get a small token of our appreciation. Or if you're a business, there's different advertising opportunities. Or if you want to sponsor the company, there are those options as well. But if you go to the website, it lays it all out, and you can see what's happening. But I truly believe, and I can't stress this enough, that the more support we get, the more opportunities we can give to dancers, the bigger the company can grow, the more established Irish dance becomes as a profession, and then the more opportunities we can give to other dancers. So it's like it's a cycle, and the more we can get people involved, the more people can get involved, and the bigger it can become, and the more impact we can have. And the legacy that I want to leave this world is not my ego and I had the biggest dance company in the world. What I want people to say is that I gave people the opportunity to shine. And so Irish Dance Theatre wants to showcase many different talented dancers, but also different choreographers, different musicians. When you're doing seasonal productions, you can involve a lot more people, and I just think it can be more of a collaboration. And with doing this podcast, with talking to a lot of people, with talking about the Irish dance community and the competition scene and everything, I've realised that for me, there needs to be more of a discussion, more of a dialogue with the entire community about how we move as a profession together, or as a community, and as a industry, and as a art form, and that kind of thing. So that's my passion. That's where I'm coming from. I hope I haven't offended anyone. That was not my intention at all. I just want people to know how passionate I am about Irish dance. I love Irish dance, and I always will. I'll go to the grave, involved in Irish dance, as many of the people involved will. We do it because we love it. It's not financially lucrative for a lot of people, but we absolutely love it. And I do truly believe that anybody that gets involved in Irish dance is very proud to be an Irish dancer, and that's where I'm coming from. So the more pride we can instill in our dancers, the more we can showcase them, the more the world can see what we're doing, the more that the more opportunities we're given to our dancers and to further our culture and our community. I will stop there and get off my soapbox, but please go to irishdancetheatre.com. And thank you so much for listening to this. I hope it's been illuminating to some people. I'm probably not even going to listen back to it. I'm just going to publish it. I'm not going to edit it. I'm just going to let it go because I may second guess myself, and I'm just going to get it go. So thank you so much for listening. Check out irishdancetheatre.com and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Irish Dance Podcast. If you haven't already, please go to iTunes or your favourite podcast app and subscribe to our podcast. That would be great. And if you are on iTunes, if you wouldn't mind please leaving a review, that would be awesome. Thank you very much. Please visit our website at theirishdancepodcast.com. There's also a survey there where you can fill in what you think about the show so far. So look forward to your feedback and have a great day. Bye-bye.